So just a short introduction to Stuart and his company. So Stuart comes from IPSEM Squared, and it's a sport and event agency helping businesses turn ambition into measurable and improved performance. They combine strategic insight and digital transformation to align people, processes, and data, what we heard so many times, for the best outcomes. Their Vantica digital platform, developed specifically for sporting events, brings automated workflows, real-time insights, and a single source of truth. The result is certainly control and visibility across your planning, delivery, and governance. I think that's the most important, governance activities. Less time and effort, fewer errors, reduced risk, better decisions, and higher quality outcomes. So over to you, Stuart. And I hope one day that Ignites will be able to work with your solution and also to all the other solutions, Derek's, Joe's. Alexei, we already had a chance, but I hope one day we can come together as a consortium, as Derek always likes to put it, and we deliver a seamless event and we show that as an example to all future event organizers. Stuart, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those things, as you say that, like I would hope we would all work together. And actually, as you talk, as people have been listening today, I hope that they've sort of seen, okay, yeah, well, actually, there's a transport system and there's a data a geographic visualization system, and then there's a incident management system. But actually, all those things need to interact, and therefore they all are complementary to each other. So it's been a really good way of seeing that and understanding sort of some of the challenges around that. So thank you to you, Nilva, for pulling it together. I think it's been not only the session itself, but sort of the way it's been structured, and the companies that have and the people who've been providing their expertise and their input and their experience really does show that sort of there's so many different moving parts, but they do need to move together. So thanks everyone for those who've stayed. I'm very, very happy to sort of talk to you for about 15 minutes or so. Neo's given a bit of background on our business. We've been a business that's been around for about 5 or 6 years. In a moment of blindingly good timing, we started it the week before COVID, which was always an interesting place to be. But what we've then done over time is we've been involved in operational delivery and planning of events. We also do a lot of work in the commercial space as well. And what I'm going to talk you through today is sort of something that we've developed based on our experience. And the development of this came from our team sort of sitting around and becoming aware of some technology that was available, and all of us going, gee, we wish we'd had this when we were doing our particular roles, either in the commercial side or in the LOC and the sports side. So as I'm always technically incompetent, can I just confirm that people can see a page that says business performance improvement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason we talk about business performance improvement is because we wanted to move the conversation specifically away from technology. And that's very deliberate choice on our part, because we wanted people to think, as Neo touched on, technology is only as good as how you apply it. So therefore, you need to consider the people and the process element. And as we talked about in the previous session, understanding what your objectives are and what you want to achieve before you go out and sort of go, well, we just need to buy some technology. So therefore, our approach to talking to anyone about our platform will always be, look, we need to understand what your objectives or the business problems are you're trying to resolve before we get into a conversation around what needs to happen and what happens next. So if we go through, I'll stick my hand up now. This quote is not correct. The actual quote is, an intellectual person solves a problem, a genius avoids it. What I didn't want to do was label my team as geniuses, because they think they're pretty good at the best of times anyway. So sort of, it's that point around, look, figure out what your problems are going to be and figure out how you want to deal with them and not have to react to them later. So what we pulled together is something which is, and we sort of call it an advisory service, but it's much more a collaborative, which is then results in the delivery of a platform to help you. So what we bring in is we come and have a look at is, how are you working? What are you doing now? What do you need to do? What needs to be done to land this successfully? And how are you using that information to make ongoing improvements? What Vantica brings to the table then is it can provide a single source of truth. It's based around collating, and the reason it was originally developed and has been used across a number of other industries under another name, it was deliberately developed to help organizations capture non-financial and qualitative data. So if you want a financial report, you can go into SAP or whatever you're using, hit a button, and it'll give you your financial report. If you want to know about how you're doing other things within the business and non-financial, often that information is not easily captured. And where it is, to what some of our discussion previously, it's been captured on Excel or in Word or something like that. And in which case, they're not designed for that. And as a result, there's a lot of manual input, there's a lot of double handling of data, there's a lot of administration and around sort of getting the right information into the right spreadsheets and then getting it back out for reporting or decision making. So what this seeks to do is eliminate a lot of that effort early on, particularly around that administration and coordination activity. As a result of that, it also has automated workflows in it. So if you were going out, for example, and collecting information on requirements, normally, or in a lot of cases, what will happen is that you'll send an email or you'll send something out. An email will go out to a bunch of people. You then need to manually chase it when it doesn't get delivered on time. Your information is probably, where you're collecting information is probably sitting in something that may not be 100% suited to the purpose. And often it's sitting in something like SharePoint, where at some point, inevitably, someone will download it or save it under a different name, and you'll lose version control and you'll not be quite sure that you've got the latest version. As a result of that, even before we think about AI, because it's sitting in a single source of truth and you're getting information in a structured way, even before AI, you've got real-time information. So the information in there is visible immediately, and you can use that for benchmarking and for data-driven decisions. So therefore, if you understand what you want to be looking at, to the conversation before, if you understand what your objectives are and the type of things that are important for you to be following and tracking, it gives you the capacity to do that, because you can then analyze live information. As I said, it's proven technology. It's used by a bunch of large organizations globally under a different name. KPMG, it's used a lot in agribusiness and a bunch of other tourism and a bunch of other industries. Why we got involved in this is we saw that using something like this would allow you to have more certainty, control, and visibility of what was happening, particularly during the planning process, where you've got a lot of different elements and different functions or departments coming together, trying to get to a consistent end solution. I tend to think of it a little bit like an orchestra, which is, if you're running an event, you want all the different parts of the orchestra to be playing together and in time. And if you've got the violins playing something different from the trombones, it's just going to sound terrible, and it's not going to be effective. And what this aims to do is to make that process of being an orchestra almost easier, or not almost easier, but it is easier. So if you look on the right-hand side here, and I won't spend too much time going through all this, but what it brings to the table is it allows you to evaluate, track, and see in a live structure what's going on in the business. So you can structure it in almost any way around a range of different things. And that, one of the challenges we had early on is actually, when you look at the platform can probably do too many things. So back to the conversation we had before, you end up with potentially too much data. So it's much better to have it structured in a way that suits what you need. As a result, as I've touched on, you get a better idea around business performance. So you can do gap analysis of what hasn't been done. You can use it for intelligence, benchmarking, data analysis around what's going on in the business, and also action plans. So if it is a case that you're measuring what's being done and some things haven't been done in a certain way or have not been done at all, depending on how you operate your business, you could actually push resources out to those people to go, look, this hasn't been done, this is what you need to be doing. So therefore it's driving that attempt to get consistency across a business. It can obviously be used for issue management and risk management and knowledge retention and management, because it does have that database sitting underneath it, and it provides the single source of truth. You've got information there that is valuable now, but can also be valuable in future. So if you're in an environment where you're running multiple events, this really helps, because you can start looking at, well, over time, this is where we have problems. For example, you can slice and dice the information. When we run events in one particular discipline, this seems to be the trend of what's happening. when we run events in a particular geography, these are the issues that we seem to be having. So you can start to get a view of when you do different things, when you do different things and you replicate them in the same environment or even different environments, what are the things that we need to be aware of and what's causing us the sort of pain or things we need to think about to get right before we dive into doing them too far. Very good at doing sort of standards. By that, compliance activity, so ESG reports, anything like that, certification, accreditation, not the accreditation that needs with the little tag, but accreditation to particular industry standards or regulatory standards, and also audit. So the tool acts or the platform acts as a parent-child structure. So if you're the parent, you can sit there and you can see all of the information across all areas. You can have the information being provided in across different departments, different functions. You can use it externally with different agencies because it's a SaaS tool. All you need is an address, or even different geographies if you've got venues running in multiple cities. And therefore, as a result, you can then start to see how that all comes together. And as the parent, if you've got someone reporting and going, look, this is where we're at and this is what we're doing and this is our status, you can go back and use that to do another check later on if you so wish. And it's extensively used in other industries for that purpose. It also provides leadership and governance because you've got to get the structure right in terms of how the process flows work and how you run through the process and how you use the platform. You need to define those structures and processes and authority levels to make decision before you can roll this over the top. And that's one of the reasons we talk about the business performance improvement, because if you don't have that, if you put a platform over the top of something that is either broken, not thought out properly, or over not, and maybe what you're doing now is not broken, but it's not fit for purpose for what you could be achieving, then the impact of the technology is not going to be as effective. So that's why we always start before the tool itself, which is what do you need to do? How do you do it now? What needs to be improved? How do we draw out that efficiency? And if you've heard of sort of Lean and Six Sigma, it's that's the sort of thing we do with the business before we put any technology over the top. And as a result of that, you get better decision making because you've got the data. You also get increased visibility and accountability for different areas because everyone's seeing the same thing at the same time. Also a very powerful reporting tool. So you can pull data in from other systems through APIs or even uploads, and you can provide progress and status reports, stakeholder increased transparency for funders, I think as Derek talked about in the last one. The other thing about this, where it's used extensively, is you can automate the production of those reports. So if you sit in an LOC and you have to provide a report to funders once a month, but you've got 3 other bodies, governmental bodies that you need to report to once a month also, that's probably a lot of effort, human effort you're expending within your organization to pull that information together, validate it, and then put it into a report. In this way, all of that, a lot of that, or nearly all of it can be automated. So you're then freeing up your resources to focus on much more value-added things. So broad level, that's what the platform does. And then there are specific elements where we've developed particular models because it's a very modular and customizable. I don't know if that's a real word. You can customize it to be specifically meet the needs that you have. But in events, it's a lot around assessment and evaluation, coordination and integration during the planning process, tracking and monitoring progress and how you're doing, and also client data and communication. So for example, you could set up a portal that was specifically aimed at either your national, competing national federations or NOCs, where you have a single place where all the information you need can be inputted into there. So therefore it's available across all the different systems that you might need. And therefore for the NOC, there's only one place that they need to go to and provide all their information. In the sports side, so that's more with federations, in terms of dealing with to explore that many into one and one back out to many environment, which is why it works in events where you've got many sort of functional areas, many stakeholders, many agencies and partners into a central point and then going back out to them. Good with governance, particularly we know governance in sport is a hot topic at the moment. Also good for funding management, not in terms of distributing the money, but being able to evaluate initially what the request is for that money and why, And then at the back end to track impact. So that is being able to go out, and we know this from conversations we've had with federations. In some cases, they go, look, we do hand out money to our people and they sort of tell us what they've done, but we actually don't know if they've done it or if they've done it well. And this allows you to start understanding where that impact, the impact of what's happening, particularly around funding, but that impact management or impact assessment can occur in any way. But we find that people are most interested in the funding element. From an IF perspective, event delivery and oversight, particularly where they're reliant on LOCs to deliver what are effectively their events. So I've always found it a little unusual that IFs will go, oh, well, our LOC does everything. But at the end of the day, it's the IF's event and they carry the reputational risk. So therefore, them understanding, having a better understanding of what's happening has always got to be beneficial. We talked a bit about impact and evaluation, and it can also be used for voting and awards. The third module is around sponsorship. If you are a sponsor or an agency, if you are just doing one event, that's easy. You understand what is in your sponsorship contract, you know what your rights and assets are, and you can sort of track that very easily because you're just doing one thing. If you have a sponsorship, say, for example, across for a major multi-sport event where there might be 50 different venues because there's 50 or 40 venues because there's 50 sports, or you're sponsoring something which is a series and there might be 100 games in that series across a year. At the moment, it's very hard to track whether all your rights and assets are being delivered at all those places. And generally, it's quite manual and quite laborious in doing so. So what this allows you to do, if you're a sponsor or an agency, is actually, look, we've got the contract, here's what needs to be done, let's make sure that we're tracking everything that we should be getting and removing some of the effort and the coordination around having to do that. So if we look at sort of some of the uses here, we've talked a little bit about that. So knowledge retention and learning, and it can be used for e-learning, eventing. So which events are you going to bid for? You can evaluate that. Or if you are an event owner, a more structured way of evaluating events, because you can structure how they provide information to you so it comes in consistently and you can collect and collate it and analyze it in a much simpler manner. The evaluation of how it's going and then impact measuring afterwards, compliance and standards and reporting and stakeholder management. Where it's used in other industries, and I'll use the reporting, it's used by one of the big four consultancy firms. Where they use this platform, it spits out automatically spits out a 50-page PowerPoint report. Now, no one should ever have to read a 50-page report, but it gives you an idea of the power of the tool in terms of being able to support and automate different activities. Just looking onwards a bit, in terms of the event-specific bit, which is called Fort Event, it will support integrated functional and venue planning, progress checklists, assessments, tracking, planning reviews, issues and risks, cross-event, cross-venue, cross-agency and partner coordination, and also client communication and data. And on the side, development programs and pathways, member engagement, evaluation that we talked about, and also having a single source of truth. So we know, for example, that most international federations or continental federations struggle to collate information about what happens in their world because it comes in from different national federations, different continental federations, etc. So this makes it easier to pull that information together and get to the right point. So you've got a greater visibility. How it works, the key bits in terms of the system overall are the top two sides. So Fort Event, which is the event-based one, you have that data management capacity. So it's a single source of truth, and it allows you to manage that outward comms and the coordination of that. So that all happens in system on both sides. What you can see is that the system is quite modular. So you don't need to commit to everything. Back to one of our earlier conversations in the last session, you don't need everything. The best thing to do is figure out what are your pain points or what are the most important things you understand. And that's where we start to structure, look, this is what we would put in place to meet that. But then what that also allows you is, if there are other things you need later, it provides the interoperability to be able to pull information directly from one place to the other. So in the event world, run sheets, checklists, readiness, generally the compliance activities you need to do, and then the planning module. So for example, like service levels, policies, plans, the contingency or operational readiness processes, you can pull all that information together in a single place more quickly, more efficiently, and with a lower level of risk, because you're not double handling data at different points. It's all happening in an automated fashion. And as a result of that, you can tie it into issue or risk registers if you wish, and also that event evaluation, coordination and impact tracking. If I keep moving on, because I'm conscious of time, the reason we have structured it like this and the reason the system has so much flexibility is, if you look at most businesses, what they do is pretty simple. They have a business objective or something that they need to do. They need to understand how well they're doing it. They need to verify that they are doing it. They ideally should have access to the information that allows them to understand what they're doing and be able to analyze and prioritize which activities they need to be focusing on. Out of that, they can better develop their plans, and then on an ongoing basis, they can transform how they do that. So what you do this year, you can learn from and do better next year. And then generally you have to tell someone about it. So it's a very simple process, but this is what most businesses do. An event business is no different. It has a bunch of objectives. It needs to understand where it is in terms of its progress, and make sure that that's correct, be able to benchmark where things should be better or could be improved, plan how to resolve that, and then do the transformation that they need to. On the bottom, what you can see are some of the types of activities, and this is deliberately small so people can't pick me up on the detail because it works differently in every organization. But what you see here is 3 different things. The yellow is activities that normally will always happen, can be done in the system. And that can be things like having a standard template that you enter all the information into, so it's done consistently in a single way. And it can be built in that, for example, if you're looking, if functions or a customer group has to put information in, if they don't provide all the information, they can't submit it. So it means, therefore, you're making sure before you receive the information that it should have everything that you need in there, or ideally have nearly everything you need in there. So they're things that are already happening in the system, but it can now happen in the system. And then you have the green bits, which are functionality which exists because you're using the system that you probably didn't have before. And that's often around being able to automatically identify issues, making sure that they're collated and managed, being able to automatically track status of different activities, and then also being able to do the reporting, and also having somewhere where the information is being stored with the documents themselves. And we probably have, there's 3 here that we've specifically shown, but there's probably 16 to 18 different event processes which normally occur that this could be used for. And for example, the one on the right, post-event reviews, always painful because generally people forget to do it, or they don't do it, or you've got to chase people. You've got to get information in from different sources, which the system can of course do. And a lot of this can be automated. As you can see along the bottom, there's a line there that says document and process management and automation. So if you can see it closely enough and you can see the red lines, they're things that now happen in the system. So if you send something out, if you're doing policies and procedures and you need different functional areas to sign off on your policies, if it's not done on time, the system automatically chases those functions and tells you who's behind or where the shortfall is. Whereas ordinarily, in the world that I've often lived in, and sadly my teams have lived in, is that someone somewhere needs to generally keep a track of that. And when it doesn't happen, you need to figure out who hasn't done it and then go around and talk to them and try and cajole. Now, that human element doesn't disappear, but what it means is that information is being done, the process of identifying what gaps is already done. And what you can do is understand that, and then you spend more time resolving real issues rather than doing the admin and coordination of keeping up to speed with what has been done. We did a piece of work recently with someone around looking at, if it was used for a venue review before an event, how much time would it take out? And looking at it, we managed to take, because of the nature of what they had to do, they had sort of 4 or 5 people going in and doing the review. They then had to produce a report. They then had to give it to someone to centrally collate all that information together. That person then needed to produce 2 reports. One was an operational report for the venue, and one was an executive report. And then what they then needed to do was also move the critical information into an issues register. Where we went through and we mapped this out against what the system could do, in that case, we identified that for a single venue review, we could probably take 10 to 12 working hours out of the process. And that was before you started looking at the issue management, because again, if you were using it for issue tracking, you can put a time limit on it. So if something's not resolved in time, it sparks an automatic notification and things get escalated. So that sort of gives a sort of more real feel as to some of the ways in which it can be used. As we said, because it gets used so extensively in other industries, it's very customizable. Although what we prefer to do is have a standard process like these, that then people can look at and go, actually, we need to do that anyway. That will give us the process to do it, as well as giving us the technology to do it.
Time value of time.
Sorry?
Time value of time.
Yeah, exactly. Just very quickly on why we talk about business performance improvement is because basically 70% of digital programs fail. And the reason for that is that there's not a strong enough focus on what the implementation is. So we talked a bit in the earlier session about making sure you get the objectives right and you get the scoping right before you even start to look at the technology. It's a little bit like building a house. The more time you spend on the foundations, the quicker and the better the construction of the house will be. What tends to happen is people go, well, I need the system and let's put the system in, which means if it doesn't do what you thought it was going to do, you have to go back and reinvent the wheel and spend more time and more money getting it right. So therefore, as I said, our discussion is always, look, let's identify what you need done. And that could either be, we've got a problem, there's something we definitely need to do, or there's a high value of something that if we can do it here, this makes life easier for us. And therefore, as we touched on, we've got the people, the process, and the technology. And what you get as a result is you get a stronger and better output than if you just looked at the technology on its own. Just very quickly, a couple of different, here are some screenshots of where it's being used in different industries. These are predominantly sport-focused ones, where it's being used for club development or federation development and governance evaluation. You can see there's a bunch of different ways in which you can have the data reported back to you. And that's a personal preference for how the business wants to see it. And that just gives you an idea of sort of what can come out of the system itself. And then as a final thing, very quickly, why we think this is a good solution is that it provides operational efficiency where it's being used in other industries, where it's being applied to sort of specific processes or activities. It's resulted in up to a 50% reduction in cost and time, and removing hours of reconciling spreadsheets, sending emails, updating schedules, which because it happens automatically, you're moving the risk of incorrect data transposition when you move it from one to another, or information sort of being chopped and changed. It provides that element around enhanced coordination. So we know that stakeholder alignment in event organizations is always a challenge. This allows you to do that more effectively. It gives you the single source of truth, provides better compliance, particularly on activities that we know all events have to do, and it improves the level of reporting that can be done. As a result, you get a better return on investment, you get better assurance around your performance. So your KPI, your impact, your oversight, it provides better data for people to be able to see. And it also provides a foundation for sustainable transformation, particularly if you're conducting events which are ongoing. So that's a very quick overview. I think I probably went for too long, sorry. But yeah, that's our tool. We've brought it to market only in the last month or so because we've spent a lot of this year making sure it's structured to work specifically with sport and events. And the reason we're doing that is because, as I said, when I looked at it, the almost unanimous thing that came out was, we wish we'd had this when we were doing it in LOCs and within sports federations.